Today, we're going to go through some lessons learned from our recent experience building an MCP server. Recently, we developed a proof of concept using MCP, Model Context Protocol, to control our fleet device management server. And this resulted in a pretty successful demo, which I'll link to in the description. Basically, the demo showed that we can use natural language to interact with our fleet, with our device management, no commands to memorize. It was context aware, so the AI agent knew about the previous prompts and it could use that information in its future prompts. And the AI agent was able to select the right tool for the job. So in this video, we're gonna go through MCP, quickly cover MCP and some lessons we learned from our experience. All right, so what is MCP and why do I need one? So MCP, Model Context Protocol, is a client-server framework that enables AI agents to interact with your tools and as well as APIs using natural language, right? Like natural language that you would use with ChatGPT, for example. So MCP was introduced by Anthropic recently, November 2024. And here's their site. And its primary use case was actually for local tools. So tools are on your local machine, such as databases. So that was the primary use case. Since then, people have tried to expand it to use remote tools. Of course, using remote tools requires extra levels of authentication. So some might ask, why do I need another framework? Aren't AI agents already good enough to use the tools directly, right? Can't I just take instructions how to use the tool, give it to my AI agent, and it can use it? Well, yes, AI agent can use a tool if you give it instructions. What MCP is trying to do is trying to standardize this approach, right? So for example, as a tool vendor, you can create an MCP server for your tool and allow other people to use your tool in kind of a standard best practice way. Also, from a user's perspective, instead of telling your AI agent about every tool, every time you want to use a tool, you need to tell about it. Imagine if the AI agent could have access to a library of tools of these MCP servers and just can install one and immediately get to using it. All right, so the MCP protocol, let's jump back to the documentation, has some key components. First are resources, basically data objects that tools can operate on, file contents, database records, things like that. Then tools. Tools is probably the most common thing that's being used. I'm not sure why they put it third in the list, but basically tools are functions or actions that can be performed. And they have a name, a description, your input schema, which is basically your parameters they can accept. Then there's a few other things like prompts, basically reusable prompt templates for common LLM interactions. And of course, all this is wrapped around in a schema definition, right? By hitting the base URL on the MCP server, the AI agent will get the schema for all of these. All right, so let's talk about how we build an MCP server using agentic AI. So I'll jump into our IDE. So for building, we also used an AI agent to build our MCP server. In this case, we use RuCode, which is spun off from Klein. So I'd say the biggest mistake we made up front is we didn't dig into the details of exactly how the MCP protocol works and what parts of it do we need. We didn't dig into the details about standard I/O versus SSE, things like that. So it would have been nice to know all of that to speed up the process, actually. So the biggest mistake, right, that happened is we asked it to build an MCP server. It reasonably said, I'm going to use these dependencies. There are SDKs, right? MCP SDKs for multiple languages. Let's go back to our documentation. So I think they're here somewhere. Here we go, Python, TypeScript, Java, Kotlin, C#. I bet that you can find more as well. So we decided to use TypeScript. It said it was going to use an SDK, but then, as it tried to work on stuff later on, it ran into trouble, and it basically said, well, I can't get this SDK to compile. I'm just going to YOLO it. I'm just going to implement MCP protocol from scratch. And we let it do that, and it came up with something that sort of worked. We can use curl to get some MCP data, but we couldn't use another debug tool, which you can get on this page, is the MCP debugger, MCP inspector actually. MCP inspector, you launch it. You can launch it just like this with the web UI to analyze what's on your MCP server, see what tools it has, be able to execute those tools. It's pretty handy, right? So we ended up letting our AI agent waste a lot of our AI credits. This cost up here $32 for this project. Relatively small project to add was a bit too high. But once we actually came back and we said, hey, you got to use this SDK, things started working, and everything went smoothly, right? So really make sure your AI agent is using the standard SDK and doesn't try to implement MCP from scratch. Let's take a look at some code. So here's an example tool, install software. It's got some parameters, and all it does is basically calls this API URL. So it's a tool's fairly simple. We're just wrapping our API call in this tool. So conceptually, it's pretty straightforward. Let's go to overall impressions, right? So we found that our agent interactions with our MCP server can get quite complex and challenging to debug. Sometimes if something doesn't quite work right, the AI agents will try different ways of accomplishing the same things. And we have to be aware of how AI agent works, how MCP server works, how the tool works, to see that it's spinning its wheels and it's not quite doing the right thing, right? We gotta know all of these things to kind of give the end user who's going to be using our MCP server a good experience. And of course, we're dealing with AI, so it's sometimes hard to tell how often it messes up, right? And how to fix or prevent the AI going in the wrong direction. If we have a QA team, testing this, it's quite a large space to test because we don't know exactly how our customers are going to be using this MCP server, what kind of things they're going to ask it, what kind of things they're going to try, what kind of things they're going to complain about, right? Another thing is our product already has an API, a CLI, a web UI interface. So we've got 3 interfaces we're supporting, and MCP is yet another interface, right? So MCP may feel hard to justify, right? So for smaller teams, we recommend making sure you've got a customer who is ready to pay for it, or just admitted that you're purely doing it for kind of the marketing aspect or maybe investor aspect. All right, hope you found this useful. That's it for today.